Let's talk about some of these films, and I guess one of the things that I'm wondering if there's symbolism in these films that is Masonic, then it must be being put in there intentionally, correct?
Well, right. There's two way. There's two ways. There's a couple ways of looking at this.
Right.
One is it's intentional, which I believe it is in a lot of cases. If it is not intentional, and I can think of a couple examples where it is not intentional, you are clearly dealing with what is called the collective unconscious of Carl Gustav Jung, where
Yes.
the material is appearing because it's so ingrained in our subconscious. Things like mythology, the zodiac, the solar lore. This comes also out of the works of Joseph Campbell. That,
Exactly.
that it's appearing there because we just can't help ourselves, for lack of a better word. There are some instances where I know it's there, and it gets into, and I've been asked this before. Well, why are they putting it in there? Well, what it's doing is it's turning the movie into this great myth, and basically it's revealing what the mythology and the lore that these movies are based upon. By putting these little clues and symbols in to the movies, and also, you mentioned this before, it's a challenge almost. I think these filmmakers like to challenge their audiences. I mean, Darren Aronofsky does this ad nauseum in Black Swan, with these little clues that he puts in there, that will really tip you off when you understand the underlying symbology of what's going on. You'll see it in the Excalibur movie. That's a movie I talk about in the in Royal Arch of Enoch. That's a solar, the King Arthur legend is a
Sure.
solar allegory from start to finish, and the best presentation of the solar allegory is the Excalibur movie that came out in the late 70s, early 80s, by John Borman. Some of the other movies in the Royal Arch was like The Ninth Gate, which is Kabbalah, the Being There movie with Peter Sellers, which is a solar allegory, the two National Treasure movies, which are very Masonic. The first National Treasure movie is a retelling of the Royal Arch ceremonial, the recovery of the Masonic treasure vault underneath the Holy Ground. And when I was writing Royal Arch, I kind of teased these movies, these Hollywood movies with this Masonic symbolism in it, but there was so many more subject matters and movies I wanted to talk about that really didn't fit in. So that's where cinema symbolism was born out of this last chapter. And cinema symbolism, I talk about movies like The Exorcist, the Back to the Future trilogies, the Star Wars, the Matrix, some horror movies. I get into some of the mythology of like Dracula, the werewolf, Frankenstein's monster, which is a Kabbalistic golem, and things like that. I get into some TV symbolism with the X-Files. There's some unique things going on there. And
Let's talk about that. Let's
Go ahead,
talk
I'm
about the
sorry.
X-Files for a second. I enjoyed that show. Hit me with some examples.
Well, I know there's the one that was always one of my favorites in the X-Files was, and I think it's a second series episode. It has a German title called The Hand That Wounds, and this was the one that takes place at this high school where the students are practicing the Goetia, the Ars Goetia Solomonic magic to summon the demons, and the substitute teacher shows up who's the devil or this high-ranking demon. There's a scene in it where Mulder and Scully are standing in front of the high school, and in the background you can see the name of the high school, and the name of the high school is Crowley High. I thought that was really clever. Obviously an homage to Aleister Crowley. That was always one of my favorite ones. I'd have to go back through the X-Files again, but you'll see little things like that. And of course, the whole thing with the the X-Files, but it's not even really hidden symbolism, with the whole thing with the, government conspiracy
Sure.
and the UFOs and things like that. But yeah, I always liked that one with the Crowley High School in the background. I thought that was really clever. I talk about that one in the book.
They had an episode with a golem in it as well, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right. There was one. I know that on this one show on Fox right now, which also did the X-Files. I want to say the show called Sleepy Hollow. They had a golem in it, and this comes from the world of Kabbalah. The creation of imbuing life into an inanimate object. So it's Kabbalistic magic. I guess the most famous Kabbalistic golem in history is probably Frankenstein's monster. What another Kabbalistic golem, this will floor you, probably the most second famous Kabbalistic golem in entertainment history is Smurfette. Is is a Kabbalistic golem. She is a lump of clay that Gargamel uses black magic to create to undermine the Smurfs' little perfect communist society there. The Smurfs are Papa Smurf is Karl Marx, by the way. This is why he wears the red Phrygian hat. The Smurfs are the communist society. They all work without pay and live rent free, but they all do their own chores, as little communists would. The Papa Smurf wears the red costume, of the red communists and things like that.
I've never wanted to see that film until now, man. It's like, now I want to see it. That's really amusing. I love it.
Yeah. You'll see some weird stuff with cartoons, and I know I was talking with Joe about Disney before. So you'll see some stuff with the cartoons and Disney and things like that. But when you get a symbolic eye for this stuff, you'll really start to see these mystical elements turn up in popular movies, and the list is endless almost. Matrix has Gnosticism in it. The Star Wars movies is a lot of solar allegory in that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you about the James Bond series, because I've heard you talk.
Good God.
I totally did not see this coming, but let's talk about that a little bit, and Ian Fleming as well.
Oh yeah, that's a great subject matter. Ian Fleming was in British intelligence during World War II and he was the handler for Aleister Crowley.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, Aleister Crowley was a British agent for the English during World War II, and this is a true story. When a lot of people aren't aware of this, when Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy, flew to England on the botched peace mission. Hess was into astrology. A lot of the higher-ranking Nazis were into mysticism and the occult and things like that. When Hess flew to England, they captured him and they put him in the Tower of London. This is a true story. Aleister Crowley went to Ian Fleming and said, "Listen, let me interrogate this guy." He said, "I'll perform some black magic, sorcery. I'll do some Goetia magic in front of this guy. We'll scare the living hell out of him." And we'll use this to threaten him, to reveal like Hitler's astrological proclivities. Himmler was into this material as well. So was Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister. And Crowley went to Fleming with this. And apparently Fleming went to higher ups with this idea. It was ultimately vetoed. It never came to fruition. But Fleming was Crowley's handler. The James Bond stuff has all kind of esoteric imagery in it. The 007 sigil, that's Bond, 007, that's John Dee. When Dee would write these espionage letters to Queen Elizabeth, he would sign them 007. And it's a spyglass. It's little eyeglasses is what he was trying to draw, and the symbol was representing that the correspondence was for her eyes only, which is where that term comes from.
Sure. For
your eyes only. And of course, Fleming would have been aware of Dee through Crowley, and imbues Bond with the whole 007. It's an esoteric homage to Dr. John Dee. And the James Bond novels and their subsequent movies are replete with alchemical Rosicrucian Gnostic ideas, where but Bond is sort of the solar hero. He gets the mission from his solar ruler M. M is the 13th letter of the alphabet, and this denotes the sun ruling the zodiac. So then, the sun sends Bond to Hermes Trismegistus, who is Q, the little quartermaster guy, to give him the sacred wisdom or the gadget that ultimately saves Bond's life. Then Bond will always encounter the sacred feminine, who is the Bond girl, that once he hooks up with her, the alchemical wedding occurs, and now Bond can go on and defeat the Gnostic demiurge-like supervillain, who is the alchemist Goldfinger, the dragon Hugo Drax, the voodoo occultist Mr. Big, or the Illuminati, Blofeld who wants to take over the world. So yeah, you'll see the Goldfinger. You have what is it? He has the little out of all there's a lot of alchemy is a real big popular subject matter in Hollywood. Well,
Sure.
when I say that is you will have movies that are alchemically themed that don't actually deal with people trying to turn base metal into gold, but will deal with transmutation of some kind.
Exactly. Yes.
But in Goldfinger, you actually have an alchemical movie where he has the Philosopher's Stone, Goldfinger that is, which is the nuclear dirty bomb, which is going to transmute the gold in Fort Knox and make it worthless, while alchemically making his gold supply, what is he, 10 times more valuable than the gold in Fort Knox, so collapsing the Western economy. And of course, the name Goldfinger, the alchemist who was able to turn transmute it was said to have the golden finger, the magical finger, the golden touch, as it were. And Goldfinger's first name is Auric, and AU is the alchemical symbol, for gold. Yes. So you'll see all that in that. James Bond has some great stuff in it. The whole thing with Fleming with you have the voodoo aspect with that's the Live and Let Die movie with the tarot cards. And if you watch the movie, I talk about it more in detail in the book, and the information's not in front of me. But if you pay attention to the tarot cards that she's flipping over, and some of the ones you'll see on her desk, it's anticipating things that are coming in the movie, and little clues that are going on in the movie. You'll see that in there. A lot of the, and this really isn't, esoteric, but a lot of the, some of it's a little concealed, but obviously all the female Bond girls have these, very, overt sexual names, denoting the sacred feminine.
Yes.
And Fleming would have been aware of that. James, I have a whole chapter on the James Bond stuff. It's fabulous material.
Tell me about the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, well, yeah, that's another good one. This is L. Frank Baum, who was a member of the Madame Blavatsky Theosophy Society. And you have really three levels of symbology going on in the Wizard of Oz. You have one that's just the base one that's about this little girl who gets whisked away in a tornado and goes to this magical land, has this adventure, and comes back changed to her home, and that's the end of it. This is sort of what you would just call your base explanation. Then you have two other hidden allegories going on. One's a little more well known than the other one. The first one is the political allegory. It's a long story, but you have the entire Wizard of Oz characters, and the theme of the movie is a lot of what was going on in the political, socio-economic culture of the late 19th, early 20th century United States, where you have things like
the Dust Bowl.
I'm sorry,
the Dust Bowl. I'm not sure.
No. You have where when she gets to Oz. The Wizard of Oz, the actual Wizard of Oz is President William McKinley, and what the yellow brick road is the gold standard, and what McKinley was trying to do was get the gold standard to back paper money or greenbacks. This is why he lives in the Emerald City, which is green money. In the book, her slippers are silver, not ruby, and this represents what's called the free silver movement, which was very popular amongst farmers, where it had to do with the printing or the coinage of silver money, which was going to have the same effect on paper money. And the scarecrow would be the American farmer who would have been in favor of the free silver movement. The Tin Man is the American laborer, and the whole thing going on with the Tin Man is that he can't move. This is symbolizing the Depression of 1896, where a lot of laborers were laid off and found themselves out of work, and basically found themselves, completely, in a stagnant position. This is why when Dorothy encounters Tin Man, he can't move because he's stagnant. What got the laborers back to work was J.P. Morgan's oil, the oil companies. This is why, in order to get Tin Man moving again, you got to oil him. This is just a complete political allegory. The Cowardly Lion is Eugene Debs or William Jennings Bryant, who is McKinley's political opponent who had the loud bark and the loud, roar, but no political bite. That's why he was a cowardly lion. The Wizard of Oz is McKinley, who lives in the Green Emerald City. The negative aspect of paper money is inflation. This is why the wicked witch, is green-skinned, representing the darker side of green money. This is the whole. There's much more to it than this. I'm just paraphrasing because because of time. But then you also have, on another level, you have the whole Gnostic initiation story where Dorothy is taken away on the winding staircase, up the tornado, up the ladder of initiation. This is the tornado. This is the winding staircase in Freemasonry, where she's taken to the magical land. This is the spiritual realm in color, where she's left the material world behind, of Kansas. And, you're getting into the whole thing of the initiatic experience, navigating the ancient mysteries, which Madame Blavatsky said, in order to do this, you had to have intelligence, fortitude, and courage. This is why the three comrades are after a brain, a heart, and fortitude or courage. The golden path is the golden path of initiation. This comes out of Buddhism, that leads to the demiurge, which seems to be a legitimate messiah, but always turns out to be, bogus. This is the Wizard of Oz, who of course turns out to be just basically a humbug.
Right.
So yeah, you have a lot going on allegorically with this whole concept of spiritual initiation. Being wary of organized religions, that the golden path of religion leads to a bogus messiah, basically. You have in the book, it's more in the book than it is in the movie, where the two witches who use the white magic are of the North and South, and this is symbolizing Gnostic ascension and apotheosis, because in order to achieve this, you have to move up and down on the ladder of ascension, where you have the two women who use the black magic. They're of the East and West. That represents stagnation, because you can't achieve ascension by moving left and right. So Dorothy is battling the two negative women, where the one gets killed right away. The two negative witches are of the East and West, representing spiritual stagnation and lack of ascensio, or lack of apotheosis, where the two white magicians, the North and South, this is the one who turns up in the movie, is Glinda, played by Billy Burke, who, by the way, has a wand tipped with the pentagram with the 1 point up and the 2 points down, identifying her as a white Kabbalistic magician. They're of the North and South, symbolizing Dorothy's spiritual ascensio, which she ultimately achieves by learning the truth within herself, that there is no place like home. She clicks the heels 3 times. The number 3. I mean, I could go on and on about that. Well, and then she gets back home and no one understands her, because she's initiated, and
understood.
They're the profane. They don't understand what she's gone through, basically.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me flip it a little bit now, because basically everything that you're explaining now all makes sense to me, and it all comes from people who did this intentionally, knowing what they were trying to convey. Now, I would ask you, do you believe that some popular artists at this point are taking symbols of Freemasonry and other esoteric ideologies and just using them for shock value? For example,
yes, I do. Go ahead.
For example, I mean, here's how absurd it is, and maybe it's not absurd. Maybe I just don't know. But a few years ago, there was much to do about the Kardashians having a Christmas card with the checkerboard floor. And then you have, a couple of years ago, we had Madonna doing a Super Bowl that had a lot of bizarre imagery in it. And then you have people like Jay-Z or Lady Gaga, and I'm not picking on these people, but my thought is these people are not really vested in this. They are doing it just for the theatrical rise that it gets out of people. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they are actually involved in some level. But what do you think?
No, I tend to agree with you. I was just on someone talking about this. It was the Madonna Super Bowl thing where she was dressed up as the Goda Mendes.
Yes.
You've got the Katy Perry now video where she's the Egyptian goddess.
Yes.
You've got Beyonce doing the eye in the triangle thing with Jay-Z, doing it as well. My take, there is two thoughts on this. That I mean, I agree with your take on it. There's a thought process that these people are involved with some sort of Hollywood witchcraft, Illuminati, satanic cult, and that this is evidence of this. I see it the other way, and I see it your way. I think people in their production team, their managers, their stage designers are familiar with this esoteric material to a certain level. Probably not. Probably, I wouldn't call these people masters, but they know enough about it that, you know, they are incorporating it into the stage performances. And my attitude is, you know, people say, well, what's the motivation for this? Well, the motivation is it gets people talking about it like you and I are doing right now.
That's right.
And it gets chat rooms going, and there's no such thing as bad press. You know, calling Katy Perry an Illuminati witch, you know, well, I'm sure she's crying all the way to the bank on that one. You know, and, you know, it's, I agree with you. It's shock value. I believe it is intentional to some extent, but I don't see it as evidence of that, I know because I've seen videos that this is evidence of this Illuminati, Antichrist, devil worshiping cult in Hollywood. I see it the way you see it, that it's, that people in their production design team, their stage managers, their publicists, see this material. They know it's popular. I mean, look, these people can do internet searches too, for God's sake.
Exactly.
I think it's intentional, but I think it's like you said. I think it's more being an agent provocateur than it is, being evidence of this demonic conspiracy in Hollywood. I agree with you. That's the way I see it too.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I don't bring up the subject too often, but I mean, every time I see that, and listen, you know, I've read the sites where they say, oh my God, did you see what Lady Gaga did? She did this or that or the other thing. And to me, I just thought, you know what, these are smart people. They didn't get to these positions by being dummies. And they also are probably clever people that have curiosities like we do.
Right, yeah.
And so it does not surprise me that they would look into these things and go and then think to themselves, you know what? How edgy would it be if I dress up like this or I perform against this particular background, you know, and then people that actually don't know that much about the subject anyway, they only see the symbols, they only hear the talk. So I'm glad to hear that you think the same thing.
But I think that too. But let's not forget also, you know, this predates Jay-Z, Beyonce, and Madonna.
This is true.
I mean, you will see tarot cards on Led Zeppelin albums.
That's right.
Look at the Beatles, for God's sakes. I mean, a lot of their album covers are very esoteric. The Sgt. Pepper album has Aleister Crowley on it.
Yes.
You get into the whole thing with the Beatles code, with the whole Paul McCartney being dead thing.
Right.
Yes. I mean, you'll find these clues on their covers. I mean, I know that's intentionally done. I mean, Abbey Road is the godfather of that, with the funeral march going on. So yeah, I mean, it predates, Katy Perry and Jay-Z.
Gotcha.
I mean, the Rolling Stones, you'll find
Sure.
you'll find it in their albums and in their songs too. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, a tool. I mean, my God, you really want to go back, look at Mozart's Magic Flute. I mean, that's Egyptian and deals with a lot of Illuminati initiatic themes. So, you'll find it even in Mozart, for God's sakes. So, I mean, I definitely think it's a powerful conduit, but, I'm kind of with you. I'm not ready to ascribe this really dark, sinister motive behind it that a lot of people are.
Well, you also completely anticipated my thoughts earlier, because I was going to ask you, like, at what point did these types of symbols, and you totally anticipated it, at what point is this Carl Jung? At what point is this Joseph Campbell? And we're talking about the hero's journey and things like that. There's all of these various types of symbols that are out there that mean certain things to certain people. But give us more info, like with Neo and the Matrix. And I assume he is the solar deity, Neo.
Right, absolutely. The Star Wars, the Matrix movies, and the Lord of the Rings deal a lot with Campbell's monomyth. The whole thing with Carl Gustav Jung is basically it's a way, with the collective unconscious. It's a way of saying, basically, if you don't want to believe the materials intentionally put there, it's kind of like an outlet of saying, well, it's there because it's there, because we can't help ourselves. We put it there whether we know it or not. I mean, like,
Right.
you know, I'll get to the Matrix in a minute. Like, for example, I mean, I'll give you a prime example. It's one of the best ones I can think of that has a Gnostic demiurge in the movie, where I know for a fact that the director of the movie had no clue what a Gnostic demiurge is, you know, the lesser creator god. It's the Ed Wood movie. It's the Ed Wood movie, Glenn or Glenda. Ed Wood was this B-movie Hollywood director.
Yes. It's a Johnny Depp film.
The Johnny Depp movie is a biography of the real Ed Wood. Ed Wood in the early 1950s made this movie with Bela Lugosi called Glenn or Glenda. It's, for lack of a better word, a 65-minute apologia for transvestism. But he cast Bela Lugosi as the demiurge, who's this lesser creator god who pulls the strings and manipulates humanity for materialistic ends. If you had gone back in time and said to Ed Wood, hey, why did you cast Bela Lugosi as the demiurge? He wouldn't know what the hell you were talking about. But there it is. I mean, it's one of the best examples. I talk about it in the book.
Get it.
It is by far and away one of the best examples of a Gnostic demiurge in a movie. Getting to the Matrix, I mean, this is just Manichaean Gnosticism from start to finish. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Neo Anderson is the, you know, or James Anderson. Neo is the sun god who is dead and resurrected by Trinity. Oh my God, you know, there's a dead giveaway on her name. Yeah. You have the Hermes Trismegistus character in this. This is Morpheus, who, you know, the Hermes Trismegistus character is the old graybeard. He's kind of easy to spot. It's the guy who knows everything, but divulges the material piecemeal. Morpheus, Gandalf the Grey, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Albus Dumbledore are all Hermes Trismegistus. Yeah, I mean, Neo is the dead and resurrected Sun Man who has his Sophia, his Gnostic Sophia, who's Trinity. This comes out of the Nag Hammadi library, where the Holy Trinity identifies Sophia as one of the as a component of the Holy Trinity. I don't have the quote in front of me, but when Neo is brought aboard the ship, the Nebuchadnezzar, you get a flash of the hovercraft's nameplate, and it says it's Mark 3:11. If you look up that Bible verse, it says something like all the evil spirits will bow down before the Son of God, which is Neo, and the evil spirits are, of course, the robots or the machines. You have in the Matrix, in the whole series, you have you have your demiurge, your creator of the false world, who is the architect. He shows up in part 2. The archons are the agents. This is his henchmen. This is all Gnosticism. And Neo, again, is dead and resurrected by Trinity. He gets killed. He gets reborn. And then what's he do at the end of the Matrix? He ascends into heaven like Jesus. Yes. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you'll see. I mean, there's a lot more to it. I'm just going over it very briefly, but yeah, all three of the Matrix movies are very Gnostic. I mean, in part two, the second Matrix movies, one of the ships is called the Gnosis. I mean, come on. I mean, the other ship is called the Logos. I mean, how more obvious can you get? Yeah, and what you will also see in the Matrix films, in the three Matrix movies, is elements of Campbell's monomyth, and you'll find that in Star Wars, you'll find that in Lord of the Rings, you'll find it in Harry Potter as well. I get into that. It's the whole monomyth thing with Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, which is basically a soul. Again, if the hero is the sun, then the monomyth is the solar journey, for lack of a better word.